Welcome back. We have in the studio the South Kurdufushi MP, who also served as the former legal reform minister, who is giving his opinion on the events that are unfolding in the country right now. As you know, when President Nasheed came into power in 2008, he pledged that the country's economy would be better during his term. But things happened and it has taken a turn for the worse. And what do you think that the Waheed administration could do in this situation? Do you think that in the time that is remaining for Dr. Waheed, do you think that he would be able to make the economy take a turn for the better?
President Waheed has been the vice president serving with President Nasheed when these policies were formulated and brought into action. So therefore, he doesn't need to learn these policies afresh or anew. He knows they were developed with them together. So with President Nasheed gone and President Waheed now acting in his behalf, or rather taking his position, I think he has the background relating to these policies, how and why they are formulated. And he probably would have had also the time to form his own opinions about these policies, whether they were substantially good or substantially bad, whether any of them needed reorientation or fine-tuning here and there, or whether any of these policies needed to be abandoned. I'm sure it would have crossed his mind throughout the 3 years he spent as vice president with President Nasheed. Now he has nearly 2 years, well, effectively 1.5 years, because election fever would set in a few months before the inaugural date, right? So he has 1.5 years to finally make a decision about those opinions he must have had all this while. If he feels that certain policies are good, he's totally within his powers to continue with them. If he feels any of the policies needs to be changed, he's totally within his powers to do that as well. And if he wants to even abandon some of the policies, he's totally within his powers to do that as well. So it's very much up to President Waheed and his new cabinet that would be set up hopefully soon, that would want to do an audit of these policies and see what needs to be continued and what needs to be seized or what needs to be dropped. I think until that happens, what President Nasheed had started will continue unaffected, because we also should believe in a degree of continuity. So I think, the kind of serious damage that has come to this economy during the period of 3 years, I don't think can be rectified in 1.5 years, or sometimes even in 5 years, because President Nasheed's economic policy was a total 180-degree turn in some aspects, and he has implemented them, made commitments on those policies. Some of these are even supported by legislation now. For anybody else to make a further 180-degree turn to reverse them would be a Herculean task. It would not be easy in some areas. And effects of change of policy also will be seen only after some time has lapsed. So I think for them to review these policies, make an audit of them, change them, introduce new ones or amend existing ones, all of them will be a difficult task to accomplish just within 15 months, and even to show results thereafter. So it will be difficult, but it will be a path that has to be taken, and some of the trends must come to a stop. Some of the policies must be dropped. Some probably may be entertained with changes. I think, as I said, it's all up to him and his cabinet to decide what's best. And now that he is supported by the opposition in parliament, erstwhile opposition, now as you say, MDP also probably will be considered as an opposition party, but the erstwhile opposition, the opposition that was there when President Nasheed was in government, probably would want to work with President Waheed to see which policies may be continued and which may be discontinued. As you know, the political opposition to President Nasheed has had very strong views about some of his economic policies. This would be the time they try to convince the new president that they may be discontinued. Let's see.
Vice President Dr. Waheed, when he took over as the new president in his first nationwide address, he said that the events that unfolded on Tuesday showed the true independence or sovereignty of the Constitution. And with that, he said the independence of the police and the MNDF was shown through that. And immediately after his appointment, he had solved the crisis of MNBC and Raja Radio. Do you think that this independence that has suddenly been given to the public and to the commissions and institutions, do you think that would trigger any changes in how the public perceive what independence is and what true sovereignty is?
Definitely, I think the general public, the Maldivian public, has been more aware of Constitution now than they were about, let's say, even 2 months ago. They are more aware of the rule of law than they were aware of it maybe, let's say, 2 months ago. They're definitely more aware of certain fundamental rights than they were aware of them 2 months ago. The protests, the continued exposure of the public to constitutional provisions, the Bill of Rights, the provisions relating to access to justice, sanctity of life, right to counsel, right to habeas corpus, right to an attorney. All these are explained to the public now in very dramatic fashion that's going to stick in their minds for a long while. So it's been a very educational process also to an extent, I would say. And I think all of those factors combined made the public realize that Constitution is actually the words we have chosen to live by, how we would want to govern our state and our own rights with that of the state. Public also have rights, state with the state. It's a contract with the state where the state powers honor and respect the individual rights. So I think that realization has settled in, and all of us have renewed our allegiance to the power of the Constitution and the magic it does. I think until recently, Constitution probably was just a book in which some black ink was written and some dead provisions were there. It was only left for some lawyers or some judges to interpret and apply. But I think public has now started seeing Constitution as a living document that breathes life and has a power of its own, a magic of its own, and can be related to individual liberties, can be related to his or her role in government or state affairs. So I think that is the success or the message that we can take home from the events of last nearly 1 month.
So, to wrap up, as an onlooker, as a politician, as someone who has seen this change, what are the last words, very briefly, what are the last words you have to share with us?
I think